This week, Ron Woerner, Senior Consultant at Forrester Research, will join us to discuss zero trust and why that doesn't mean zero risk. In the security news, if it can run Linux, it should. TikTok thefts, significant vulnerability findings, and I'm not even joking. Typo squatting is lame. What will it take, Bruce? Stealing from the TPM, go anywhere, including root. What if attackers targeted your yacht? 2 for the price of 1, exploits. X is really old and really vulnerable. Come for a ride on the Chariot and be memory safe. Code breaking old letters and vulnerable Wienermobiles. All that and more on this episode of Paul's Security Weekly. This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where exploits run wild, packets aren't the only things getting sniffed, and the cocktails flow steady. It's Paul's Security Weekly. Right now, everybody is talking about cryptocurrency, and the cybercriminals are hiding in the conversation. Cybercriminals use social engineering loaded with urgency and fear to successfully prey on your company, your employees, and your customers. Spear phishing is just one of 13 types of email threats. Barracuda has identified these 13 types and shows you how you can protect your company, your customers, and your reputation. Find out about the 13 email threat types and Barracuda email protection. Get your free ebook at securityweekly.com/Barracuda. That's securityweekly.com/Barracuda.
Oh, hey, welcome to the show. But first, let me introduce you to a man who is confused, wonders why, if they say money doesn't grow on trees, why do banks have branches? Mr. Paul Sidorian.
Welcome, everyone, to Paul's Security Weekly. It is episode number 773, being recorded on February 15th, 2023, right here in G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island. To my left, Mr. Larry Pesce is here with us.
Oh, it's good to be back in studio, back home.
I'm jealous of your little electronic things you got going on.
Yeah.
Over there. You got an add-on for your Flipper Zero.
I did. Yeah, the excuse me, the Bork multi-board version 2 came in while I was away last week.
How long ago did you pre-order that, dude?
Oh gosh. I think I pre-ordered that one a month ago because he does really short runs of stuff, and yeah, like you have to be on Johnny on the spot when he does the release to go and get him.
I gotcha.
Yep.
You'll have to let me know how you like it.
Yeah, I literally just plugged it in when I got to the studio. It came out of the bags then. So, yeah.
Awesome. Mr. Sam Bound is here with us. Sam, welcome.
Hello, glad to be here with you.
Mr. Josh Marpet is joining us. Josh, welcome.
I'm frantically looking up the thing that Larry just got because I want one. I must have one.
Good luck with that.
BorkElectronics.com.
Yeah, BorkElectronics.com. Oh, now
Thank
we
you.
said it on the air. Now everyone's going to want one.
Don't worry.
Someone edit that out.
Don't worry, they're out of stock. They're out of stock.
Mr. Jeff Mann is here with us. Jeff, welcome.
Happy to be joining as usual, and sort of have a hankering to get back into the studio. So
Sweet.
Have to work that out.
Make sure you follow us on Twitter for live stream reminders, highlighted clips, memes, and more. You can find us at Sec Weekly. Ron Woerner is a security consultant at Forrester Research, has over 20 years of IT and security experience. As a noted consultant, keynote speaker, teacher, blogger, and podcaster, Ron joins us to talk about ways to combat threats through people, process, and technology, including zero trust and what that really means. Ron, welcome to Paul's Security Weekly.
Great to be here. Hello, everybody.
It's nice to have you, my friend. Ron, I want to get started with a little bit about your background and ask you how you got your start in information security.
Oh, back in the dark ages when we had dial-up modems. Anyone else remember those?
Yep.
First computer was a Coco color computer. Trashed 80. I know, right?
Oh no! Oh, so yours was the Trash 80 color computer.
Right.
My first computer was a Trash 80 Model 1, the silver box.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
The ones that would blow up or something. That's why they had to go to Model 3.
Pretty much, yeah. And my second computer was a Coco 3.
Ah, nice. Those were the days,
That they
with a
were.
cartridge slot and everything. So yeah, I got into computers like so many with gaming. But back in the day, if you wanted to play a game, you had to program it yourself. So from there, I got a computer science degree. And just because I have a degree in computer science does not mean I know anything about computers. Just to warn you, just means I knew how to program in C back in the day. I was an Air Force Intel officer. So if you combine computers and military intelligence, you end up with neither. But led me right into the early days of InfoSec, because in the military, you learn how to protect stuff. You learn about data classification, supposedly. Well, it's unless you're a politician, but that's a different story. So in the early days of trying to build security programs, that was kind of easy for me because I'm also a Unix sysadmin, starting back with Solaris Sun OS way back in the day. So got my hands dirty on the keyboards. It's amazing how my fingers remember VI, and when my brain had forgotten the whole part of it. Then I got into teaching and then consulting.
Ron, it's funny how we remember that, even though we sat in front of those gigantic monitors and were somehow radiated all those years.
TV tan. TV tan.
TV
Well,
tan.
I mean, qualified,
Right?
gigantic, Paul. They weren't
Preserved.
huge screens. They were just
Yes.
thick and heavy.
That's a great point, Jeff. Most of the weight was from the back, not the actual size of the screen. Yeah.
Flyback transformer and all that
13 inch to get a 15 inch. Wow, that was big back in the day.
That's
So yeah,
awesome.
now I'm just doing a lot of
One of those
security
reasons
zero
why a lot of
trust.
us no hair.
That's right.
Yes.
Yes. Sorry, what were you
well,
saying, Ron? Nowadays,
sorry.
you do what now?
Well, zero trust. But are we playing cybersecurity buzzword bingo?
Yeah, I think we've already checked the box with zero trust, and I think one of the things we wanted to do was what does zero trust really mean? We haven't talked about like that specific point on this show in some time.
Perhaps
It's
Ron
like-
can enlighten us.
Hopefully I can. It's like the word risk. It has so many different meanings, particularly if you ask the vendors. Ask 10 vendors, you'll get 15 different meanings of what is zero trust. And may even say that their product does all of zero trust, which then your BS flag should go up because even CISA says, yeah, that ain't possible. So what it is, it's assuming that the network we're on has already been breached. It's continuous monitoring, or to simplify it even further, ABC, always be checking. So the nirvana of just in time, just enough access, that's the idea with zero trust. It's something, though, so many organizations within the federal space are building to, which means eventually we're going to see, as it rolls downhill, commercial sector will begin to see what they need to do. And actually, I know of numerous commercial organizations and utilities that are doing it not for the buzzword, not because they have to. It's really just a way to mature a cybersecurity program. It's really it. Go back to the early days of Salters and Schroeder's design principles, least privilege, and all of that.
I was going to say it sounds, when you describe it, Ron, it sounds like it's the concept of least privilege that we've known about and tried to practice, 20 plus years now. And also that I don't trust applications necessarily, right? So that maybe not least privilege, but I don't allow this program to access any. It's not about its privileges, but what it can access more so than privilege, right? Privilege requires some access, but maybe there are certain, like we used to have the DMZ, where we're like, well, I don't really trust those systems because they're exposed to the internet, so I want to put them in a separate place. And then maybe on those systems, we had a least privilege, so we would try and run our web servers not as root.
Right. And then you still have admins who will go in and do everything as root, including an rm-r star. Just saying.
So what's
Hey, Ron, you
Jeff.
mentioned vendors in terms of defining terms. Do you have a sense of the origin of the term zero trust? I suspect it was some vendor, but do you know?
It was some guy.
John
Kindervag, right?
Yeah, John Kindervag. Ironically enough, Forrester Research came up with it about a dozen plus years ago. Chase Cunningham has continued it. Today, David Holmes, Heath Mullins, Carlos Rivera do a lot of research regarding zero trust. So
wow,
really
you have those names
embedded
off the top of your head, Ron. That's good. I would add Google's Beyond Corp study.
Yes. There are, numerous, including Microsoft, is building it into a lot of their products. Same thing with AWS. As organizations migrate from on-prem to the cloud, makes it a little easier. But one of the challenges we're seeing is as far as authorization. We talked about access control. Everyone's focused on authentication, the multi-factor, using or getting away from passwords because passwords suck, right? So let's move away from it. But what are we authorized to do? Ooh, now that gets hard because that requires decisions and decision points and managers to make decisions, which that means security people have to talk to the business. Say no. So all of those are parts of zero trust.
And from a product perspective, I have seen a product that can apply this to programs. And this is really about, in zero trust in this context, in my mind, is still a philosophy or a design principle. The implementation of it also is called zero trust in this case, but it's this program. We've seen examples of this many years ago on the show. Not many, maybe 4 or 5. But I've got this program, and I've told my access solution or zero trust solution that, look, this program can only talk on this network port. It can only access these files. It can only do this thing in this way. If it goes outside of that, it's denied. If it's modified in some way, it's denied. So I feel like, I've never thought about it this way before, but zero trust is kind of this culmination of these security practices that we've always known are good defenses into kind of this one concept to tie it together.
Yes, you're exactly right. But it's taking it down a layer, trying to get to as close to the data now as possible. And then restricting access to the individual and their device and even the workload or applications they may be using. For example, I may just have normal access to an application, but if I'm not on the right device or using the right application, that may mean being denied, which is going to take a mindset change, a culture shift, because people are used to having access. Think of permissions creep. Who has access to everything in the organization? That person who's been there for 15 years. Why? Well, you never know. I just may need access someday. When was the last time you used it? I don't remember. 3-4 years ago. You don't need access. I was once working for a Fortune 200 company, and the CEO said, I want my badge to have access to every door in the company. Facepalm. We're like, no.
No, you don't. You don't.
Yeah,
you don't really want that.
No. He always has an escort. So it's just keeping ourselves off the suspect list. It's so hard to do least privilege for ourselves, not even to mention other people. But if you don't have access, you can't be blamed when something goes wrong.
Right. And I think
nobody can have domain privileges except for me, of course.
Right. Yeah. And as an administrator, we're like, I need root access to everything. And then I think as we matured a little, wait, if I don't have access to it, when it goes down, nobody blames me. Well, maybe they still do, but not as much.
Right. Yeah. It's harder to prove. And if you think about it, what do auditors often look for? They're looking to see who has access. So it helps with auditing. So zero trust actually brings in a lot of efficiencies to the organization, but it's definitely going to be an iterative process. You're right. There are numerous products out there. I like to be agnostic regarding naming any, but that put a front end in front of a lot of the legacy. Because think about where are a lot of the challenge areas for organizations. Legacy. Those old apps they can't get rid of, like the FAA. What is their one safety program that recently crashed? And they said, oh, yeah, we'll have it replaced by 2030.
Yeah, it's 30 years old now. What's another 10? Right.
Right.
But so how many financial institutions have mainframes? Because the answer is all of them. And the legacy apps there are monstrous.
Yep.
I mean, Jeff, when you did PCI QSA work, how many of the institutions that you dealt with had mainframes?
Why are you speaking of it in the past tense? And Most, if not all.
Yep.
Or they had what is it, Paul, that you used to work on the kind of sort of a mainframe?
AS400.
Lottery
Yeah,
machines.
the AS400.
AS400. Yeah, AS400 is not. I wouldn't. Purists would not
Mini
classify it
computer.
as a mainframe. More of a mini computer. Correct.
Yeah, it's more of a mini computer, but we don't make those designations anymore. But it's not quite a mainframe, but it's not quite a server either.
Yes, I agree. It's somewhere in between. I just want to go back, Ron, to zero trust principles. Do you still call them zero trust principles?
Yes.
That's probably the best phrase for it. Can be applied to users, applications, the network, and well, I guess users would cover RBAC or access controls, right? So it's really apps, users, and data is how Matt Alderman likes to frame it, right? But I think in the case of zero trust, it's really apps, users, and network controls. Yeah.
So there are 5 pillars you'll hear about. And we don't like the word pillars because that assumes silos when everything overlaps. There's identity or people. There's the devices they are using. There's the networks that are coming from. And the idea is that don't assume that you have a private network anymore. Everything could be and should be potentially internet accessible but there is microsegmentation. So that's 3, 4 being workload, which think about like an operating system or an application. Around that is data. Data is both the start, middle, and end and data includes pretty much anything of value. It's not just those bits and bytes of information, but it's getting back to the cataloging of data. Do you know, and this is an old phrase, Groundhog Day. Sorry, I have to say that because we live in cybersecurity Groundhog Day, reliving the same day over and over. But it's, where are your crown jewels? Have you taken the time to catalog what they are? So many organizations still don't have good inventory of what they got. They're still struggling with the basics. Hacking is so much fun. And everyone
to
wants
clarify,
to
Ron, I think you have that backwards a little bit, and you, I know you get this, but for our listening audience, people don't know what they have that is of a value first before looking for it. They don't know what it is that they have.
Get back to the basics, though. Taking the time to do that inventory, which is boring AF, but you got to do it. Yeah. You ask your network people how many devices on the network, they'll say, 3,482. You ask the Windows people, they'll have a different number. Ask accounting, different number. How many licenses do we have? 3 times as many because you didn't know how many licenses and you're paying for it.
I've always liked accounting for the record keeping on what we've bought as an input to asset inventory and asset management. As we move into a SaaS and more cloud-based world and everything being more accessible and purchasable, accounting, not 100%, but a lot of the times, if it never goes through accounting, right, that's the use case that should worry us if it was completely off book, right? But if you're subscribing to a service and you're going through the business accounting, they have a record of it. And I think that's a good input for asset inventory. And I think it still is the most important step, is knowing what you have.
Even in the cloud, because how many cloud resources, how much are you spending for your cloud resources? I made the mistake once. I got some free time on a cloud service, so I used it, not realizing I was limited to like 20 hours. And of course, 20 hours is nothing. You're playing on it, and it's like $500 later. We can tie it back.
500, you're lucky. Most people make the thousands of dollar mistake with cloud.
Right. Yeah, I caught it early.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Yeah. But it's just, but that requires security people to know economics. Oh, no. It's not all about the technology.
Once you've got a better handle on what you have, which is, that's a lot going on there. And I don't want to say once you have a perfect handle on what you have, because you never really do. You've got a process and you found what you believe to be most of it. I think the next kind of discussion point is that discussion around risk. So now I know what I have. Now I got to protect it, but I got to prioritize it because I can't protect everything that I have with the same level of security and diligence. So now I got to make some risk decisions. And what is risk?
Yes.
And what does it mean? And Jeff and John, and like we haven't had this discussion in a while on the show.
But you opened the door.
I did. Because I think it's important. And there's a lot of formulas, there's a lot of frameworks around what is risk. But Ron, I'll give the floor to you. Once you've discovered to the best of your abilities what you have, how do you then start tackling risk?
So risk is the why. It's understanding your exposure to a threat. And what is that threat source? What is the threat vector? So threat is something bad happening. You can get into the old equation, but it's not an equation, risk associated with that probability or likelihood of occurrence. But you also want to take the time frame of the occurrence and then what bad things will happen. What is going to be the impact to you? And it's that taking that time to ask, should we care? Why are we securing this? Well, because the security people said so, because there's a risk. Okay, what is the risk? How would that risk come to fruition? What is the level of damage that could happen? Let me give you an example. Do any of y'all have an IoT thermostat?
I do.
Maybe.
Paul?
Maybe.
Not that I'd admit on open air.
Right. I will. So I will say no. I can confidently say I do not have a IoT thermostat. I have two.
I will fully admit it. I do. I love it because when my son was a teenager, in the middle of the night, he'd get hot and he'd crank up the air conditioning. I'd wake up freezing, and just to be able to change it from my phone. Convenience. And I was willing to accept that risk.
What I do with mine, though, is I put a passcode on it so that my teenage can't do that.
Well, he would actually go up to the wall and change it. But
no, on the one on the wall on mine, you can put a passcode to access the the temperature control.
Dude, I haven't even thought about that.
Yeah. I mean, he just tries to brute force the passcode, so I mean, it's fruitless.
Right? Yeah, you would probably try that too, right? Yeah. No, but it just comes down to making those business decisions about it. So we have so many organizations who are doing, and these are where I consult, doing zero trust. Why? To be zero trusty. What the heck is that? Yeah, that's exactly it. Well, if we can hit, so there's, let's just say 100 controls of zero trust. If we can hit 75% of them were zero trust, right? No.
Zero trust.
But Ron, I'm going to get a little bit dicey with you, maybe, and this
Please.
is all meant in good, in the spirit of things. It's along the lines of so many vendors that come up with a term, and everybody's got to go out and have that next big thing, the shiny new thing. But in this case, Forrester kind of started it. So, just saying.
Yes, we did. No, and it's taking it from the philosophy into the implementation because it does improve cybersecurity posture. It's been an avenue for CISA to take the lead in being able to showcase how to mature a security program because so many organizations are stuck. How do we know we need to be better, if you will. How do we do that? What specifically should we do? Zero trust, the implementation path does provide more prescriptive guidance associated with it. And particularly now that a lot of the vendors are jumping on board, it's holding them more accountable too. Because you were mentioning supply chain. You can begin to ask them, how are they implementing zero trust, not only within their product, but within their own applications, their own infrastructure as well. Because at how many places is it like the shoemaker's children have crappy shoes?
I should know the answer to this, and I apologize, I don't. But is there such a thing as zero trust certification? I mean,
No.
how does one know that they're zero trust?
See, but I don't think zero trust is a state. I think it's a principle.
No, that wasn't actually a serious question, and it wasn't meant to be rhetorical. I don't know the answer. Is there such a thing?
It's not a state; it's a feeling.
No, there is
It's a
not.
feeling.
No, there is not. You're accredited at zero trust. The industry has not gotten that far yet. because some of it, if you look at the CISA guidance, requires AI and ML. Got to get more bingo terms in there, for the data analytics of the telemetry for the log data and be able to do that just in time, just enough access control. Yeah, we're still not there yet. Or again, that authorization piece for just in time, just enough access. Industry isn't there yet, and people aren't ready to implement it. So thank God there's no zero trust certification yet. Give it time.
But it feels to me like the term has to be qualified. In other words, I think that you should have a zero trust identity and access management approach or principles, right? Then you've got zero trust application security controls. I think it's a principle that can be applied to these different areas, not, like we're zero trust, we're good, right? Like we're PCI compliant, we're good, right? How about
is
that?
Is it a principle or is it a philosophy? Is it a state of mind? Is it a state of being? What is it?
Right now, so it's more of a philosophy, but yes, it will be evolving through time for greater cybersecurity maturity. Is really as simple as it gets. So to go beyond the buzzword, think of it as that rather than think of it as, we have to do zero trust. Just how do we accelerate?
Because what I'm imagining is you have a client and a server, and you put one firewall in, and then you put in like 3 or 4 firewalls to where nothing works, and you're always trying to figure out what holes you have to let things through.
No, God, no.
Don't do
my
that.
God, no. No. Zero trust is basically all about authentication boundaries.
Yes.
You re-authenticate at every module. If you consider a system in modules, you re-authenticate at every module. That's all it is.
Continual authentication and authorization. So it's auth N and auth Z.
I think I heard the phrase before, always be checking. Right?
Yep.
Correct.
That was beautiful. That was beautiful.
How do you know I'm not a Zoom bomber? Have you confirmed my identity? In fact, when I got on this call, no one actually said, "Are you the real Ron Woerner?" For all you know, I'm a deep fake. Just saying.
This is good. If you are, this is really fun.
Yeah. Awesome.
How to get thrown
Honestly,
off of a podcast. Anyway.
Pretty good deep fake. So, whoever's doing it, keep going, man.
No,
I think you can take over his life, no problem.
And I would say we probably wouldn't throw you off a podcast because we interviewed Keith Alexander, right?
That's right. That's an inside joke.
Yep.
Ouch.
Yep.
So all of these are towards that, as I said, zero trust nirvana, building security in over time. And this is that old model, build security and maturity model, if you think about it, because we still have applications that are back in the dark ages, as we were talking about, that are going to need to be more identity aware and data aware. So this way, as we do a better job of data classification and tagging, that can be used as part of the access control. Go back, CISSP training, the Bell LaPadula model, what is it, read down, write up, or is it vice versa? I always get those confused when I teach it.
Yeah.
But anyway, those types of concepts, what can people see? Another area.
Button.
Sorry?
Keep talking.
You all right, Jeff?
Keep talking.
Oh. I was going to ask with legacy applications that, and I want to put this in the context of risk. I think a lot of folks may say, well, that's a legacy app. Like, it's run forever. It's totally fine. Why do we need this extra security? Why do we need to rewrite it? Why do we need to segment it? Why do we need to apply zero trust to it? Like, it's a legacy application. It's running on an AS400. Like, who's going to know how to hack one of those things? And I think that is something we're up against a lot in the trenches, and where this conversation and understanding what risk really means is extremely useful.
So you need the context. So what's the typical answer, for a lawyer is it depends. So it really will depend on what the application is, how it's being used, who's using it, what is the data associated with it. Can I share a quick story about this?
Yes.
So I was once working for an international hotel chain, and they came up to me as part of the security team saying, and this was back about 5 years ago, we have a critical application that's still running Windows 7. Base Windows 7, no service packs, no nothing, and we can't upgrade it. we can't apply any patches because we're pretty sure it's going to break our critical application. Do we have to patch? Now, traditional security people will say, oh, of course you need to patch. My answer was no, which of course probably get me thrown off the show again. Mm-hmm. Why? Because you could have compensating controls. When I dug a little deeper, it was used by 4 people internally, so no internet access. There was no critical data on it. It was like on hotel room rates, something like that. So, and if it went down, the world would not come to an end. Yeah, it could be resurrected. So we're able to put in segregation at the network, at the user level. We trained them. We got rid of, on this Windows 7, no internet. Because think about threat vectors. What are the most common threat vectors? Email, web, internet browsing, social media. So we told them, don't use it for that. If you do, and they said, okay, can we stay running? Yes. So it's understanding all of the parameters that go into the risk decision, which cannot be easily canned. So for those products that say, we are your complete risk equation, that needs to be worked better with the business. If you go to conference sessions, a common sentence that I'll hear, security needs to do a better job working with the business. WTF does that really mean?
Well, I think one of the things it means is digging into probability. In your example story, probability is multifaceted. And I think oftentimes we underestimate that. And so people can just take one aspect of probability and go, oh, who would want to target that system? That means the probability is low. Like, whoa. So time out. Like, there's a lot of...
Paul, you're overthinking this. Probability is very simple. It's 50-50. Either something bad happens or it doesn't.
Right.
You're done.
And there's no such thing as coincidence.
What you're talking about is likelihood, not probability. Keep going.
So probability, we should just flip a coin.
You could.
Is it best out of 3?
10.
Well, it's likelihood over time as well. What's the
it's likelihood. It's not probability. It's likelihood.
Oh, so hold on. Explain to me the difference in a risk equation between probability and likelihood.
Well, the way I learned it back in the day, there was 2 aspects to likelihood when we were going through our risk process. I'll call it. The first factor was likelihood that a bad guy would actually attempt to try this. Is the target worth going through the motions? Is it worth going through all the hoops? Assuming there are hoops, what's the likelihood that somebody's going to attempt to attack this? That was one consideration. The other consideration was the likelihood that if somebody tries it, they would be successful.
Successful or not.
The difference being probability is you're coming up with a number, it's an expression of the likelihood, but my take on risk equations in general is, for all the math that gets thrown into it, it still comes down to sort of a hunch and an intuition, and it's ultimately how much do you want to risk paying or not paying on one end or the other.
So can I make a recommendation? Let's get rid of probability and likelihood and use maybe loss event frequency. How often can we expect a loss? And then how much of a loss? That's that loss magnitude.
How much of a loss can you absorb?
Yes. If you ask Google about their GDPR fines, hundreds of millions of dollars.
But what you're going to is where I use as my crutch when we talk about risk is that let's just talk about impact. Right? Throw probability, likelihood. I think it's exactly what you just said. Throw probability, likelihood right out the window, and let's just talk about impact. Well, if the impact is really significant, let's go patch it and secure it.
And explain how you quantified that impact, please.
Well, I've had PCI
with probability and likelihood.
You threw out the window.
Numbers and equations up, and then you put the answer in boldface. I've had PCI clients that have not been compliant, and they decided from a financial perspective, which is where risk equations start or finish anyway in most commercial organizations, if not all. Let's say the fine for not being PCI compliant is $10,000 a month, and they decided, well, it's going to take us, $1 million to implement what we need to do to be PCI compliant. They did the math and decided, yeah, we're good with just paying the fine. We know it's going to take 2-3 years to get there. It's just, at that point, it's just a cost of doing business, which is okay, because at least they qualified and to me, they made an informed decision, and they knew what the weakness and the risks were. There was no compensating control. They're just, we'll just pay the fine. It's a line item now.
You just have to be careful you don't get caught. Are you familiar with SPAT's first theorem of information security administration?
I'm familiar with SPAT's liquor cabinet.
Dr. Eugene Spafford from Purdue, Practically Unix and Internet Security, going back 25 years, his first theorem. If you have responsibility for information security, but you don't have the authority to enforce it, you're just there to take the blame when something goes wrong.
It's more like 35 years, but keep going.
Yeah. Time flies. But
and Jeff's got the book right there.
Actually, I have it too. Anyway, where so often the security person is there to take the blame for the business because the business wanted to make a decision. If you choose not to decide, you still have made a choich.
You know what the CISO's title is, right?
Yeah.
Designated scapegoat.
Yep. Which then wonder why there may be burnout. But what I heard was that to be a good CISO, you need to understand economics, which means maybe taking business courses. And so what's more important, taking technology or understanding business?
Business.
Which throws so many. Because the tech is the fun. But if you watch Bruce Schneier and so many others, they all come to the same epiphany. And those of us been doing this for a while, I've seen, and this comes back to that people and process part of this conversation, was they start on the technical side, thinking cybersecurity is all about the tech. And then we still, it's like Bruce Schneier was rewriting applied cryptography, saying, if we just encrypt everything, we'll be safe. And then he went, that's bullshit.
Where have you heard that before, Paul?
No, he did write that, saying that. And
he did that.
Which is fair. We've had the conversation. I think Bruce has addressed that point as well.
Yeah, he addressed it in Truth and Lies, I think was the name of his subsequent book, where he basically, and I'm summarizing, said, I was young and naive when I wrote that. It's not that simple. So he came around. Ron, I had to apologize to him a couple years ago at RSA because I got to hang out with him for a while, and I'm like, I've been kind of trashing you for years because of what you wrote, applied cryptography. I just want to apologize face to face. It's like, oh, that's cool. I was stupid, and we're good.
He's updated it since,
But I want to
solve it.
I want to go back to the tech versus business, because you need a really good mixture of both.
Exactly.
Maybe that's not the same people, which is totally fine. But you need good communication between your tech teams and your business folks, right? The business folks don't have to be technical. The technical people need to know everything about business, but they have to have good communication. I think the organizations that I've seen and heard of that are really good at information security have really good communication. But I don't want to, people coming in this field, I want them to think that I have to be technical or I have to be business and I got to make a decision or whatever, right? You need good communication skills. I think in either case is probably
I think it goes slightly beyond that, Paul. I agree with you, but one side or the other, or an independent third party needs to be able to translate. There needs to be somebody that speaks both languages and can translate in both directions.
Agreed.
If that makes sense.
So let me throw this question out. How do people develop those skills? How did you get so good at what you do, doing this podcasting, vlogging, video stuff?
I think it's just practice and getting out of your comfort zone is a big part of it. And what's interesting is I do this, and I recommend people do this in tech too. Like, don't get too comfortable with the tech. Go learn a new language. Go put a new operating system on there, and that's your daily driver for a week. Put yourself outside of your comfort zone. Translates also
Use
to
a Dvorak keyboard.
Yes. Well, I don't know about that, but
Okay, that's masochism.
that's just going a little. But the same
another
thing.
ABC.
Yeah.
Always be curious.
Yes.
Always be curious.
But also do the same thing in business and in leadership. Put yourself in a position of leadership that puts you outside. So volunteer at one of the local schools where your kids go. Like, volunteer to go run a Cub Scout thing, right? If you want to develop your leadership skills.
Or Girl Scout.
Girl Scout, whatever local community. I guess the local community, be involved in your local community, presents you opportunities to hone your leadership skills. Or if you've never done anything, if you've never coached a kid's sports team in your life, that's, again, get outside your comfort zone and go do it, and hope the parents are patient. Right? But that's a valuable lesson, because not every, that definitely translates to the business side. On the business side, I think put yourself outside of your comfort zone in what business you want to be in. Maybe start a business. I mean, run any kind of small business, charitable business, whatever it is. Get involved with some business stuff that I don't really want to run my own business. I'm not good at that. Well, just you gotta go try it. That's how you're gonna learn.
Yeah. You just got to be able to dive right in and start doing it. Perfection is the destination, not the starting point. To use another fun phrase. Well, I'm not great at it yet. Okay. Start somewhere. I love what you said about working with your communities. ISC Squared, ISSA, ISACA, all of those chapters are always looking for new speakers. So volunteer, but maybe I'm kind of new at it. Could I get someone to maybe mentor me, to help me? Lots of people to help mentor. And then I did want to give a shout out for those who are military or veterans. We have what's known the Veterans of Cybersecurity Group that does this.
What is that? Tell us about that, Ron.
Certainly. So I'm a military veteran. So it's active duty, prior military, who help each other build their career in IT, cybersecurity, with resume reviews, those who are transitioning out of the military into cybersecurity, because there's, we've heard about the skills gap, lots of opportunities. So it's really that 501c3 or whatever, nonprofit. We do mentoring and training for each other. We have our own conference, just be able to help others who are military vets. Appreciate you asking. Great. Yeah, it is. It's just one of the many communities that are available. And then for those who are looking to get a security certification, what security cert should I get? Ooh, good question. I'm not going to answer that. Get one, though. I recommend. Do you need 400 of them after your name? No, just, find the ones that you can build toward. But if you're looking for a mentorship program, I'm part of a facilitation group where we're starting to run a weekly class. Actually, it meets twice a week. It says it's for CISSP, but if you're getting Security Plus or CISM, it works too. Because we go through the material, we give you the opportunity to learn by participating, not just by listening. And that's really the key. What I'm hearing what you said is be a participant in your own life. Be engaged. Don't just listen in and hope things will just get to you through osmosis.
Yeah, because I think I think we've talked, this is the problem we've all had in security, working in security for so long, is very quickly in our professional careers, we've got to convince people to do something they don't want to do. That's one of the, I think, hardest. I mean, that's true in a lot of different fields, sure, but very much so in security, in very specific situations. That is our goal. And so when we talk about zero trust and risk, and we're having these conversations with our coworkers, Ron, how do we paint this picture? How do we convince them that this is a good thing to do, that they want to step outside of their comfort zone to achieve a better risk model, to achieve a zero trust principles within our environment?
So one of the most quoted books in cybersecurity that has nothing to do with cybersecurity. Got to pull it off of my bookshelf. Is right here. Dr. Robert Cialdini, Influence, the Art, the Science and Practice of Persuasion, something like that. If you read Chris Hadnagy's books, he goes into it, numerous others, but I remember sitting in presentations a dozen years ago where they use this. So there are 6 laws of influence, now up to 7. 1 being likability, 2 being authority, consistency and commitment being another, scarcity, better act now.
Yep.
So learning those techniques, learning how to sell a little bit.
I was going to say, that sounds like a book about selling.
Pretty much.
One that I've read.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So get back to that business idea, but practice selling to others, because those same skills help us encourage those risk decisions. But then being willing to accept a risk decision. That's often the question I'm asked is, well, what if the business is accepting a risk and security doesn't like it? What can we do? Well, we can continue to harangue them and then be known as that pain in the ass, or document it. So-and-so has accepted the risk. Then we ask, hey, can you sign this saying that you are accepting this risk? Ooh,
Risk acceptance by a business leader? What's wrong with you? They don't do that.
Exactly. You get them to fix the problem.
right.
I want to put a different spin on that, because going back to a sales tactic, and one that I learned from the brain audit with Sean D'Souza, is the risk reversal. Sean's example is probably the most, the best one to explain the concept. He's like, look, I'm selling you a class, right? He's like, you're going to buy my class. And back then it was on DVDs. And he's like, you probably don't want to buy this because you're afraid you're going to buy it and you're going to hate it. And you have spent $150 and now you've got a bunch of these CDs laying around and he didn't like it. He's like, so I would give them the Lawnmower Guarantee. And he would say, look, I think it was for the lifetime. He's like, whenever, or maybe it was 30 days. If within 30 days, you don't like it, he's like, you send me back the CDs or whatever, and I give you a full refund. And he said the Lawnmower Guarantee, because you could literally take the CDs, run them over with your lawnmower, pick up all the little pieces, put them in a bag, send them back to me, and I'll give you a full refund. And in sales, that's the risk reversal. Knowing what your customer will have for objections and offering some compensating control to that. In the security context, I think it's interesting we haven't talked about this in a while, but it's interesting to talk about, because you want to say, well, you're probably worried that this is going to happen, but if this happens, we'll back that out immediately and regroup, or whatever you think about what your risk reversal is before you go into the meeting to convince someone to do something they don't want to do.
Be ready and think through objections, which gets down to the qualitative risk equation, if you will. Yeah, seeing things from their perspective as well. How do we understand things from other people's perspective? Yeah, go have coffee with them.
Yeah.
The old-fashioned way. Talk to them using these social engineering techniques. People love talking about themselves, so just strike up the conversation. Starts with hello. As easy as that.
I actually learned that early on when I worked at the university, because I was trying to do security very early on at the university. It was always a lot of objections. Like, go figure, in that environment.
Yep.
And and I think someone had kind of coached me on this, and they're like, they had worked for the university for some time. He's like, look, I know you're struggling. He's like, but you need to learn to have the meeting before the meeting. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, you call a meeting, you have objectives and goals for that meeting to put some security controls in place. He's like, what you're going to do, you're going to go to every single person, or maybe most of the people that are going to that meeting, and you're going to float your ideas to them before the meeting. Maybe go to lunch with them. Like you said, go have coffee with them, go have lunch with them, hash it out one-on-one. And he's like, you get better results in that meeting, hands down.
Laws of influence, definitely part of, and I don't know how we got from zero trust through it all to influence, but it's always
which is exciting to hit on topics we haven't talked about in a while on the show run. You're sparking that those lines of thinking. And because the other thing I was thinking about, I was just saying, like, you got to make it seem like it's their idea, and that's harder. But I was advising people this week. I was like, you have to do this, but I'm like, you need to make it seem like it's their idea. That one's harder. That one's not always the most direct route.
You know, Paul, I would have never thought of that. Thanks for bringing it up.
Exactly.
Sorry.
I learned that idiom from an ex-Air Force person that you and I know and used to work for, Paul.
Mm-hmm.
He had a different way of phrasing it, which I won't say on the air.
Yes.
But,
Interesting.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Larry.
Now, Ron, in pre-show banter while we were getting the teleprompter fixed, you mentioned another organization that you wanted to plug as well, in addition to VeteranSec.
Sure. It's through a company known as FR Secure, but their motto is mission before money. And they do a free CISSP training program. If you see what I'm doing, I'm actually putting it into the Discord chat right now. So starting in April, running for about 10 weeks, it's a group of us who are mentoring others as if they're looking to get certified. Now, we have CISSP in the title. It really could be other certifications, but for those who are looking to get certified or just be part of a community, like you were saying, build those leadership skills. Yeah. So I love to teach. Why do I love to teach? Really, because I love to learn. I learn as much from my students as they do for me. Shh, don't tell them that. Hopefully they're not listening. Anyway, but it's a way we build each other through these types of programs. So come and hang out, come join us. In previous classes that we've done, like last year, we had about 10,000 people join us through YouTube, at least in the initial classes, and then it dropped down to about 250 by the end. But so it's just, those are great opportunities. So when people wonder, how do I get a job in cybersecurity? Just start by doing it and reaching out through your community. I loved how you put it, get into your community groups. Move away from the buzzwords, being able to translate the buzzwords like zero trust to be able to show how you can use it to mature a security program. And that's how you build your street cred in cybersecurity. And then being able to hang out with cool guys like you.
Well, I think, hanging out is part of it. Just putting yourself in the places where people hang out to discover programs like the ones you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Is great. I'm happy to see a lot more programs like that than certainly 20 years ago.
Definitely. And if anyone's going to be at the RSA conference in April, I will
you're
be
giving
there.
a talk and a panel. Is that true, Ron?
A talk and a learning lab.
Yeah. Okay.
So the learning lab is a 2-hour small class, if you will. And it's called How to Be a Trusted Advisor for Cybersecurity Professionals. Yeah, like a lot of what we've been talking about.
Yeah, and your presentation is on influence techniques, which we talked about it briefly, but if you want the deep dive, there you go. You got a whole talk on it.
Right. Yes, it's because that's been a common challenge for as long as I've been in cybersecurity. It's, again, how do we encourage the right behaviors? Because people will do what is easy, not always what is best for them, or most safe and secure. Getting back to the thermostat. So it's encouraging it and making it as easy as possible. So often we complicate things. So that's what I'll be doing at RSA.
It's interesting how there's I believe a spectrum when you say that. It provokes a thought of when you work in security, or whether your security of your home and your family, there are some things that your wife and maybe your management of your company would just be, we got to do those things. Like you tell them, this app's really important, and I want to buy this, thousands of dollars tool, and I'm going to run it all the time against it. Like, yes, absolutely, that app's super important. Like, no-brainer decisions. Like, oh, you want to block TikTok for the kids? Yes, you should do that because they're really feeling the pain point of them doing that. And then there's the things that they would probably they would put up such a fight, it's not worth it. On the total opposite end of the spectrum, and you're like, if it's maybe not important enough to go fight that battle, so you leave it. But everything else in the middle is where we need those influence techniques, right? Because we can have some wins, but it's going to take some communication and work to get there.
Exactly. And from one of my final points is that the way to encourage the right behaviors is bring it home for them. Make it personal. How will you protect your family online, your kids, your parents? would you recommend to them? Because as soon as we make it personal for people, that's when they'll start doing the right behaviors for themselves.
My best technique is you can't have the technology device until you do your chores. Until you're all ready for school, till you've met all your responsibilities, then you can have it. And I don't block it with software or what I think Lee Neely we and I were talking about this. It's like layer 8 is the level of security that I have. Just taking it away. Because all of us know on the show and listening that your kids are going to bypass whatever controls you put in place at some point with some varying degrees of success, oftentimes wildly successful. I think it was myself and Boris were talking about all the ways our kids have hacked us and hacked around our security controls, right? But also there's the flip side of that. How many times at home have you put a security control in place and you've locked yourself out of it? That's how now everyone's thinking like, oh, yeah, like I had to pick my way into my own office because I lost the key because I was trying to keep them away from this, that, or the other thing. So it works in
but isn't it cool that we have lockpicks?
Yes, or sawzalls. I mean, whatever, whatever gets you in.
A little bit more extreme, but yes.
Thermite grenades occasionally come in handy.
Well,
if you're using that in the house, you're going a little too far, Jeff, just to be clear.
You just train your kids to be the lockpicks. Then when you lock yourself out, they get to lockpick it. It saves you the trouble.
Everyone needs their own lockpick set, right? And set of toys.
Absolutely.
Single lockpick set. What's wrong with you, man?
All kinds of lock picking device. I mean, I've seen my son use screwdrivers and crowbars to bypass physical security controls. I'm like, now you're talking. You won't get in trouble with law enforcement as a lock picking or physical access control device. What do they call that? There's a few states that have that as a law. Mere possession could be.
Oh, it's Virginia, North Dakota, and there's one other. There's 3 states that mere possession it's illegal to have.
Right. So I have a crowbar. I do construction. I don't know what you're talking about.
Nebraska, maybe.
I don't think it's Nebraska because I have one, and we have a whole lock picking village that comes by at our Colonel Con local conference. But it takes practice like everything else.
Not to be confused with Corn Con.
Yep, that's John Johnson's in Davenport, Iowa.
Because Corn Con's the one with the juice.
Yes. Couldn't take that. But yeah, lots of local cons. Go join. Be part of your community for those viewers. I know the moderators here, they all get it. It's just the people listening, be part of this. Set a goal. Try to be on Paul's Security Weekly sometime in the future, episode 1423 maybe. Yeah.
Nice.
I see a long run for you, Paul.
Yes, it's a long ways in the future.
I think, Paul, do you have some questions for Ron?
I do. Are you ready to play 5 questions with Security
Let's do
Weekly?
it.
Ron,
Have fun.
3 words to describe yourself.
Ooh, passionate, curious, and obnoxious.
If you were a serial killer, what would be your weapon of choice?
Ooh, Wheaties.
Huh.
That joke,
different.
sorry.
If you were to write a book about yourself, what would the title be?
Oh, good question. That'd be the title of my book. Oh, good question. Or it could be like the license plate on my car. Anyway.
What is your favorite hacker movie?
Sneakers.
Yes! I
Jeff
knew it was
wins
going
that
to be
one.
Sneakers.
Yeah. He had a feeling.
Well, we're from the same generation
Yes.
in so many ways.
Ron, choose 2 celebrities to be your parents.
Alive, dead, fictional, or otherwise.
Oh, good question. Let's see. Albert Einstein and Grace Hopper.
Nice.
Very nice. Ron, thank you so much for appearing on this episode of Paul Security Weekly.
My pleasure. Thank you.
With that, we'll take a short break. Come back with the security news for this week. Stay tuned.